This April 27th meeting of the Senate Finance Committee will reconvene. We have one bill remaining on the agenda, Senate File 2373, the Omnibus Labor bill, and we are going to, Ms. Stengel, maybe you could, before she starts, can walk through the planned actions for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, it's my understanding that the intended path for this bill is first to take up Senate File 2373, which is the Omnibus Policy and Budget Bill, and there will be an amendment to this bill to take out all of the budget and budget policy. And after that, there will be an opportunity for other amendments to the policy provisions and debate and discussion of the bill, and then the bill will be sent to the floor with policy-only provisions, or I should say a motion will be considered to send the bill to the floor with policy-only provisions. And then the supplemental budget vehicle bill, House File 2433, will be taken up, and an amendment will be offered to add the labor budget provisions to that vehicle bill. And then there will be an opportunity for other amendments and discussion and debate, and then the vehicle bill will be laid over.
Good. Thank you very much. And Senator McEwen, welcome to the Senate Finance Committee. Please go ahead and explain the labor omnibus bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm pleased today to present Senate File 2373. This bill contains funding for important work that the Department of Labor and Industry does to protect meat and poultry processing workers. It includes a provision from Senator Dibble, which would restore the right to sit, which was the law in Minnesota for 86 years, from 1887 to 1973. Providing a valuable common sense right to any workers who are currently denied the ability to sit when their job duties would otherwise allow them to be seated. And this bill would enact Senator McEwen's provisions that offer very basic protections for workers by regulating what employers may use AI or machine learning tools to do. However, I understand that these provisions will be removed from the bill due to their financial implications as it moves forward. This bill also contains a minimum wage exemption modification for minor league baseball players, which is a provision from Senator Pappas, a provision from Senator Mann that we heard last year to require transparency in employer cost sharing and health care plans so that workers know whether their chronic illness will preclude them from accepting a job offer before they go through the job application process, as well as several provisions from the Department of Labor and Industry, which will help streamline the construction code and licensing work they do. With that, members, I ask for your support, and I would also add, Mr. Chair and members, I do also have an A29 amendment that I would ask to be considered perhaps after the A28. It just removes one of the provisions after we had received some testimony at our last hearing. It's a section of the bill I'd like to remove.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. I wonder if we should have Ms. Bird go through the spreadsheet first, and then we can take up the amendments.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Erica Bird. I'm a fiscal analyst with the Senate, and I'll be doing a walkthrough of the spreadsheet that is labeled Senate File 2373, third engrossment. And as you've heard, this is the labor budget and policy omnibus that has passed the Senate Labor Committee. So just to orient you to the spreadsheet, in column A, we have the change items that affect the budget. Columns B and C, you have the fund type and the type of action. D through F shows that this is fiscal year 26 and 27 biennium, and the following biennium is in G through I. So I'll first jump down to the expenditure detail, which is on line 12. And you will see that there are two appropriations made to the Department of Labor and Industry in this bill. The first is, it comes from Senate File 4744, Senator McEwen's bill for Safe Workplaces for Meat and Poultry Processing Worker Act, an appropriation for hiring of one FTE worker would be the Worker Rights Coordinator position. And that carries a cost in the general fund of $163,000. Begins in 2027 and is ongoing. The next item you'll see on line 15 is the Suitable Seating for Employees Act, and there's an enforcement appropriation that was left blank in the bill. So that's represented just with the parentheses and dots as a placeholder for your awareness there. And that relates to Senate File 4003 from Senator Dibble. There's also in the Senate File 2373 a policy provision that relates, and so you'll see that on line 19, there is revenue related to suitable seating enforcement to the Department of Labor and Industry, and that is $9,000 a year beginning in fiscal year 2027, and that is ongoing, and that $9,000 is taken from the fiscal note we have on this bill. So in total, the as-passed Labor Committee Omnibus has an expenditure change in the general fund of $163,000 beginning in 2027 and ongoing, revenue of $9,000, and the net expenditure change would be $154,000 beginning in 2027 and continuing in the tails. That is my walkthrough. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Byrd. Ms. Doyle-Fontaine, did you have anything you want to go through in the bill language, or?
Mr. Chair, members, Carlin Fontaine, Senate Counsel for Labor. I could walk through any of the amendments if necessary, but let's, I don't know if you want to do amendments, or I could walk through amendment, the A41, if that would help.
Chair,
Senator Draheim,
can I make a recommendation?
please.
That we do the amendments, then walk through,
Right.
because there's quite a bit of changes with
Right,
the amendments.
that's wise. Senator Champion moves the A28 amendment. And this is to take out basically the finance provisions from the bill. Is there any, which would be added to the other bill? Is there any discussion on the A28 amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator Champion, can you move the A29 amendment as well? And perhaps Ms. Fontaine, you want to explain that one?
Mr. Chair, members, so the A29, I believe Senator McEwen explained that a little bit, that this was a Senator Mann provision that it was determined that it needed a little more work to be done on it. So that particular section is also being removed from the policy items that are moving forward. So I just explaining quickly that the A28 would just be removing Article 1, which is all the appropriations, and then it's also removing, it's retaining the section on the minor league baseball players on minimum wage, removing some compliance order and retaliation provision that's related to the suitable seating provisions. It's removing all of the sections that were from Senator McEwen's bill on AI in the workplace. And so those provisions are all removed. And the suitable seating in Section 10 is also being removed. And then the remaining items that will stay in the bill are some technical and housekeeping things, items for the Department of Labor and Industry, removing Class A installers and Class B installers and some other very technical provisions for the Department of Labor and Industry. So in short, it removes anything that had a fiscal impact. And then the A29 to remove that additional section.
Section 4 is the additional, what is it? That's the salary ranges and job posting requiring the health plan option compliance. Okay. Senator Champion moves the A29 amendment. Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. And then before we put the other things into the omnibus supplemental bill. We have Commissioner Wissenbach here, and we'd like to welcome her if she'd like to make some comments. Welcome to the Finance Committee.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Nicole Blissenbach. I serve as the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. I'm here today to testify in support of the inclusion of the governor's budget and policy provisions for DLI in Senate File 2373. Specifically, I would like to highlight DLI's support for the construction codes and licensing provisions in Article 2, Sections 11 through 19 of the bill, which account for the entirety of DLI's policy and budget items. These provisions make technical and conforming changes related to electrical permitting and licensing. The two substantive provisions phase out an outdated electrical license and reduce an electrical permit fee. While the appropriation for an FTE to support the work under the Safe Workplaces for Meat and Poultry Processing Workers Act was deleted from this bill by the A28 amendment, it is included in the A41 amendment to House File 2433. So I just wanted to point out that DLI does support this funding. Finally, I would like to highlight that the suitable seating policy language that was removed from Senate File 2373 in the A28 amendment is included in the A41 amendment to House File 2433. I recommend and ask that funding be provided at the full amount outlined in the fiscal note if that provision is included. So thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Commissioner. And as your last comment did, I believe the A41 would put in $200,000 for enforcement in that, and I think your request, the fiscal note was higher than that, but I think in effect the decision is just you'll do as much enforcement as you can with that. I understand you'd like the full amount, but anyway, is there any questions from the for the Commissioner? If not, thank you for being here. Senator McEwen, anything else on your bill before we move it?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for taking up the bill.
Okay, Senator Pappas moves that Senate File 2373 as amended be recommended pass and staff be instructed to make technical and conforming changes. Discussion of that motion. If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion, no. Motion prevails. Now we thank you, Senator McEwen. You please stay there though, because we are now taking up the A41 amendment to take those appropriations that were removed from the bill and put them into House File 2433, the Omnibus Supplemental Bill. And with that, we will bring the House File 2433 before us. And Senator Friends moves A41 amendment to the House File 2433. Senator McEwen, or did you want to go through any, we've talked already about the appropriations, and any other comments?
No, I think we've discussed them, but happy to have any discussion or answer any questions that members may have.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for your hard work this year in the Labor Committee. I have issue with, of the A41, lines 1.13 and 1.14. And, you know, when I travel all around and talk to business people all over the state, employees all over the state, I really don't hear much about this problem. That's not saying there isn't a problem. But in my district, this is not the topic that I've heard once. And I talk to people every day. I'm out and about in my district quite often. I drive home every day. What they talk about is the waste, fraud, and abuse. And if I go back to my district, and say we're spending not a lot of money, but $200,000 for more enforcement, for something that could be enforced with already the manpower that's available, for the agency to do its work. Just like anything else we change, we don't have to add more money for enforcement every time we make an adjustment. So I would like to offer an oral amendment to the A41, which is to delete lines 1.13 and 1.14.
Senator Draheim moves to delete line, on the A41 amendment, delete lines
The funding.
13 and 14 on the first page. Comments on that, Senator McEwen?
Thank you for the comment, Senator. I would say that we did hear some really compelling testimony in the Labor Committee about this provision that was brought to us by Senator Dibble, and interesting research about the history of this law as well that used to be in place, as I noted in my opening comments. I think that you are probably correct that I think most of us do assume that employers and employees are able to sort of work out these situations, but nevertheless, we do have some situations in our state where employees have been unreasonably asked to remain standing, even though their job duties allow them to be able to sit for various periods of time, and they do need some help from the law to be able to say to their employer, no, you have to help make some accommodation for this when it's reasonable to do so. And there may be, if you saw the fiscal note, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it, and we heard the commissioner speak to this, that they estimated that they would like to have ideally more funding to be able to handle inquiries that they might receive in order to give employers and employees information about the rights and about the law and what they would need to do to comply with that, or what the rules are. But we are giving them what we can and asking them to go ahead, as the chair said, to enforce it and to go ahead and do the work around this law anyway. And we are hopeful that what we are able to provide here will do the job. But it isn't what they are asking for, and they've been doing tremendous work. I believe the commissioner just came from a press conference about tremendous enforcement action around wage theft. So the department is doing tremendous work, and I believe them when they say that they could use even more money to enforce something like this, but we're already asking them to sacrifice. So respectfully, the amount in lines 1.13 and 1.14 already represents a real compromise and a good faith effort toward giving the department what they need in a more conservative way. And I would respectfully ask people to leave that provision in there and allow them a little bit of extra funding to help them with the enforcement.
Senator Draheim?
Thank you for that explanation, and I am grateful that you have a lower price than the higher price that was in the fiscal note. I understand that. But you know, I say this all the time, that our toughest part of our job is to prioritize. And, you know, I don't think spending the money on this is a priority for the people of southern Minnesota. I do agree that people should be able to sit where appropriate at their jobs. I don't disagree with that. I just have a hard time prioritizing the money that the agency is asking for. And I think we can still enact it if that's what the majority chooses to do. I just have a hard time spending that money when money is so tight. We're facing a structural deficit, or imbalance, as some call it. So that's my amendment. I hope everybody votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dreheim, and I have some sympathy for what you're saying because I had never heard of this being a problem, and I frankly think that the employer that Senator Dibble pointed out, the behavior there, I can't believe it's not in violation of the ADA. In fact, we asked some of the employees at the, I believe, Walker Arts Center who were in this situation, what about somebody who uses a wheelchair? Oh, they allow them to. They have to make accommodations. So in other words, if your situation is such that you need a wheelchair, they'll make an accommodation, but nobody else, even if you are going to need a wheelchair because we're not taking accommodation. So I think it's outrageous that I hope only a handful of employers are doing this, and I would hope that maybe in a couple of years we don't need this appropriation for doing this because employers are following the law. And as Senator McEwen said, apparently this was in our law and for 80-some years already. So anyway, I understand your concern, but I'll urge members to reject the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the oral amendment to delete lines 13 and 14 on the amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion does not prevail. Are there further discussions on the A41 amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. With that, we will lay House File 2433 over, and Ms. Stengel will be updating her memo on the actions we've completed. So we have, this will be Article 13 for the supplemental finance bill. She's been getting that out every day. And tomorrow, this is the end of, it will be the end of today's meeting. Tomorrow we're going to start up at 8:30 a.m. to take up Senate File 3655, Simra Hamid's Assault Weapons Large Capacity Ammunition Magazines Ban. And Senator Pratt, before
I'm
we
sorry,
adjourn.
are we wrapping up? Is this,
Yes,
I've got a concern about tomorrow's hearing.
it's about tomorrow's
Hearing.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you just mentioned we're going to be taking up Senate File 3655. It says that we're expecting a DE amendment. One's not been posted. Here we are, less than 24 hours away from this hearing, and it's not available. But what's even more concerning, Mr. Chair, is that there are a couple of organizations that have posted letters on this that appear to know what's in the bill before legislators and the public do. They're speaking to things that aren't in Senate File 3655 as if they're in the bill and speaking in favor of them. And I just think that's, I want to know, Mr. Chair, when are we going to see this DE amendment so that we have time to prepare? And why are we seeing certain organizations that seem to have inside information on the bills before we or anybody else in the public has a chance to comment on them?
Senator Pratt, I have not seen the bill myself, and I know Senator Mohammad's been working with a lot of other people, including some groups outside of the Capitol who have been advocating for some gun violence prevention, and maybe Senator Mohammed can tell us the status of it and where people, when the language is available and so on.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt. I will have a DE amendment. I've been working with staff to put together a number of bills that have already been heard in judiciary, and none of them are going to be a surprise to members. Once we have the full language that will be posted in terms of organization support cross-section of bills, they could be referring to those. But I don't think any of it is a secret. You'll be able to see it tomorrow, have a vote on it, and then you'll have plenty of time before it gets to the floor.
Senator Mohammed, can you get a list of the bills that would be included in it for members as soon as you can?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can send that over to you and to the members once I leave this committee.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, to Senator Mohammad's comments, I think those are an inappropriate way for this body to be doing business. We expect that the committees are doing a good review of the bills. Not that we see the bill, we pass it out, and then we have plenty of time between now and the floor to figure out what's in it, but that we actually have a chance to have a robust discussion. We don't have the DE, yet the Giffords Law Foundation, the Children's Defense Fund, they seem to be indicating that there are certain things in these bills already, in this bill already, as if the DE has already been presented. We as legislators, the public hasn't had a chance to see them. And to say that we're just going to come in and do this bill and rubber stamp it out, I think is not the way that the Senate should be doing its business, Mr. Chair. And I would hope that we could even look at moving this to a different day, because we don't know when it's going to be. If it comes 5 minutes, a DE amendment of this size, if it comes 5 minutes before the hearing, none of us have had a chance to review it. I'll take, I would love your thoughts on this, because you've certainly been someone who has stood up for the process and the role of the Senate and the committees in the past, Mr. Chair, and I'm concerned with how this is proceeding.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. And the one thing I know, and I don't know what all is in the provision, I do know that I was assured that everything in it is language that has come from bills that are either on the floor or in Finance Committee. And that's why I was urging Senator Mohammed to make the list of those bills available as soon as possible. Because I think we've either had them in finance or on the floor already. And if there is something new there, I guess I want to make sure everybody knows that as well. But we will post it as soon as we get it. But Senator Mohammed, you said you would get a list of what those bills are as soon as you can. Senator Mohammed, then Senator Jasinski.
Yeah, and just to make anything clear for you, Senator Pratt, none of it is going to be, I don't think, surprise to you. I think I've put together a DE amendment, which comes from hearing members from across the aisle. I've had an opportunity this Sunday to go to a school with you in Lakeville to hear about the issue that you care most about, school safety aid. I've been hearing from members who are Republicans and Democrats in the House. I've been working really hard to put together a package. None of it is going to be a surprise. Every single bill in the package is going to be a bill that's been heard in committees in their jurisdiction. This is the Finance Committee, and I wanted members to have an opportunity before it gets to the floor to get it ahead of time. Obviously, we all are in a number of committees. I'm in 5 committees, so posting this yesterday, today would have been great, but we're putting together a package and giving staff who right now are overwhelmed time to prepare it.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Mohammed, I know, Mr. Chair, I've heard from people you're not very pleased with the way the end of the 2024 session ended. And this is just another example. Yes, we heard a lot of bills that year in 2024, but we got a 1,100-page bill put on us 15 minutes before we adjourned, and that created a lot of frustrations. And an amendment like this that we're not seeing within 24 hours is setting the same precedence of what happened in 2024. I don't think there was a single senator that appreciated the way the 2024 session ended. I don't think there's one that appreciated that way that went. And this has the same implications that we saw in that. We should have transparency, post those amendments so that we as legislators have a chance to see that, so that we aren't given a bill with that late time frame that caused a lot of frustration, reactions, and people upset with the way that's done. So I would appreciate if we get the amendment out so that we can see it, so that we don't have a repeat of the 2024 end of session. Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask Senator Mohammed and staff who are working on it to get the list of the bills that's included, and then get the language out. We will get it posted as soon as possible. Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, not only the concern that we as legislators don't have a chance to review the bill, and there are a lot of bills that could or could not fit in this bill. I don't sit on any of the committees that have had them in front, and so yes, they are somewhat of a surprise to me. First time I'll be looking at them. But second, Mr. Chair, it's a disservice to the public. we've got a number of, and it seems like one side of the argument has had some sort of insight into this and has been able to get their letters of support in. And we don't know until the language is posted. Somebody may not know if they want to submit a letter in opposition. It just seems like a bad practice to me, Mr. Chair, that we're doing this on such short notice when we don't need to. We still have 3 weeks of this session to go. And at a time when, as Senator Jasinski said, we owe it to the public to be able to have that full transparency. We want to have this public input. There are, I couldn't tell you how many letters there are in here, but there are several. And we as the Senate should be holding a fair debate. Like I say, Mr. Chair, you've always been a champion of the process, and it feels like this is shortcutting the process in a very partisan way. And I would hope, that we could get back to the decorum and the respect for full and transparent debate on these bills. Thank you.
Thank you, and I was not aware that the language had not been out, and I appreciate that we will move as quickly as we can. And also for those who wish to submit letters, when the language comes out, we will be taking and posting and sharing any letters we get through the hearing tomorrow with the committee agenda as soon as we get those letters as well. But it's a point well taken about getting language out to people earlier, and I appreciate that comment and the need to do that, and I will ask to make sure members do better at getting things out quicker. With that, we are going to adjourn until 8:30 tomorrow morning, and with that, this committee is adjourned.